Welcome to Live with Anton Gunn. It is 2 p.m. East Coast time, 11 a.m. Pacific. To the Central Time Zone and the Mountain Time Zone, it's time for you to get in where you fit in. We are coming to the end of the year. And what I want to do over the next 20 minutes or so is to help you and your organization prepare for a successful 2024 or a successful next year whenever you might be watching this video, because I want you to have this kind of content to help you to think through how you build an organization that's full of diverse, high-performing teams and a world-class workplace culture that you can easily identify because you have become the leader that everybody admires. But more importantly, you built a team who is committed to the mission and the margin because they feel respected, they feel valued, they feel included, and they feel visible. And I want you to have that kind of organization because so many people don't have that organization. And when I mean they don't have it, they have high turnover rates where large numbers of people are quitting their job on a regular basis. I literally just got off the phone with a coaching client who was telling me about her organization. And the fact is they're struggling right now because so many people are involuntarily or voluntarily leaving the organization and they can't retain people. So they got literally voluntary turnover where people are saying, you know what, I'm out of here and I'm moving on to something else. And when I probe further, who are the people that are quitting? Well, her response was, we have some executive leaders that are leaving, but we have more individual contributors who are leaving the organization. Now, you and I both know it is tough to lose an executive leader, but you pretty much can find a high quality executive leader that can take your organization to the next level, but you never want to lose them. But we know the churn that everybody is feeling in this time is the churn of losing your individual contributors. So I want to try to do my part in the next few minutes to help you to address both of those challenges. How do you retain your top talent? Number one. And number two, how do you retain your individual contributors? Now, I want to tell you a useful and empowering tool that my clients are using to retain their top talent and to engage their individual contributors so they don't quit is called an executive retreat. See, many times we hear the term executive retreat and we think about the CEO in the C-suite going away for an offsite for 2 days to have this big powwow and come back with this strategic plan and this big impact framework. excuse me, that they bring back to the organization, and they expect all of us to be able to do it on our own. And so I want to make sure that I demystify this for you, that I'm not talking about that kind of executive retreat. I'm talking about the kind of executive retreat that gives you a framework for developing your organization and your culture ready for success, whatever those challenges are. That requires you to think differently about those executive retreats. So today's session is really about the power of an executive retreat and how it can help your individual contributors. So I want to give you pretty much like 5, when I call them 5 themes of how an executive retreat can empower your individual contributors. So I'm going to give you the 5, but first I want to talk to you very briefly about how you can structure an executive retreat and how you can use it to include some of your individual contributors to get the buy-in that's necessary for you to continue to lead change in your organization, to build that kind of transformational workplace culture and leadership development process. So the first thing I'll tell you, here's what my clients have done, and they've really done it in 2 ways. Number one, we start with an offsite that has the smallest group of executive leaders. So I'm talking 5 to 10 people, the senior most people who get the biggest checks and got the biggest responsibility for the job. I mean, they get paid the most to manage and lead the organization effectively, and it's their greatest responsibility. So I want to start with that group, and I've hosted executive retreats for senior leadership teams multiple times, and I can give them a framework. Sometimes it might even be the board who wants that kind of leadership framework, which is they bring the whole board together, go through a 2-day retreat to talk about vision, strategy, making sure we know what our opposition and competition are doing across the marketplace, but more importantly, what's going on inside of our organization. So those are two types of executive retreats. Now, the third type of retreat is one where you bring those senior leaders together, but then you think through your organization. Who are some individual frontline contributors who we should bring into this kind of leadership process? So think about the person who wins the Employee of the Year award, or maybe wins the Serviceman of the Year award, or some kind of individual contributor award that you have set aside. I know one organization had an MLK Junior Service Award, which is every year for Martin Luther King Day, they found an employee who exemplified service in their industry, in their company, and they awarded that person for their commitment to service. Now, that employee is dedicated, they're loyal, they're committed, but most importantly, they're doing over and above what they were hired to do. And so that's a person you might want to consider to bring into your executive retreat. Now, I'm just naming that one person, but I would say to you, the smart organizations, regardless of size, you will try to find a way that if your leadership team, let's say, is 5 people, you want to bring about 20% of individual contributors. So in this case, 5 people bringing 20%, well, that really means bringing one person. But if you really want to be a leader at a higher level, then think about maybe bringing 2. 40% of your executive retreat are new leaders that you bring into the mix that may be frontline individual contributors. If you have a larger leadership team, let's say your leadership team is 15. Let's say you have an executive cabinet and you have all 15 of your senior leaders from marketing to sales to operations to finance to HR, et cetera, your broader level leadership team. Well, I would encourage you, if you have a 15-person leadership team, I would bring in 5 people. That's right, a third of frontline individual contributors as a part of that process. Now, let me tell you why you want to consider doing a retreat in that way. Number one, you're rewarding people who have demonstrated acumen and commitment to your organization vision and goals and work ethic attached to it. These people are invested. So because they've invested in the company, you want to think about investing into them. So I would tell you to bring them into the table because it's going to reward them for being great team members, a part of your organization, and show them that they're highly valued because they get this opportunity to be with the senior leadership team. And you found this person because they were recommended by their peers or by their direct supervisor or someone in that chain of command. So reward them, bring them in as a part of the process. I will tell you to do that. It's an incredible reward that will give them a line of sight and some framework ahead of what you're thinking about as a company and allow them to help you to carry the message of change that you hope to move forward. Now, let me keep it moving because I want to get to the 5 reasons of why you want to include these individual and contributors into your retreats because of what it's going to do for them. And let me start with the first thing. Number one, it's going to build connection and belonging for your whole team and those individual contributors if you bring them into the organization at an executive retreat. Now, let me tell you why it's going to build connection and belonging. Because can you imagine, think back to the time when you were an individual contributor, when you got your first job. Could you imagine performing for a full year and then your boss's boss's boss comes in and says, hey, we're hosting a leadership retreat for the company, an executive retreat. And because you've been such a high performer, we want to invite you to participate in this retreat to help us to shape the vision of the company in the future. What would that say to you? And what would it mean to you if your senior leadership team thought enough of you to bring you into the room? Number one, you're going to feel connected to the organization. And then by being at the retreat, you're going to feel connected to the leadership team. That's the connection piece. Now, the belonging piece is because you got brought to the table, you're going to get the opportunity to see if you belong at the executive level. Like you might be a frontline contributor who are just getting started in your career path, but every new employee wants to see their future. They want to see, can I be like Matt, the COO? Can I be like Dave, the chief medical officer? Can I be like someone who everybody in the organization looks up to and sees them as a leader? Do I see myself looking like Stacy as a senior vice president around the table? Like it might be anybody that they see as a role model. But when you get them into the room at your retreat, you're going to build not only a connection, but their belonging. They're going to feel like that they belong, or they need to do the prerequisite work to belong to that group. So that's the first reason and how executive retreats help individual contributors by building connection and belonging. Now, the second thing you do when you bring individual contributors to your executive retreat, you really do start to build communications and transparency. So think about it like this. You ever heard the term, a lot of stuff gets lost in translation? Well, I know I do, and it gets lost in translation in organizations every single day. And what do I mean by that? The senior leadership team comes up with some strategy or communications message, and then they cascade it out to their direct reports and their direct reports and their direct reports and their direct reports. And then finally, it gets down to the frontline individual contributor. But here's what I know. By the time it gets to that frontline individual contributor, the long message that the CEO framed up in the executive retreat have been shortened down to 2 words or 2 sentences for the person at the front line. And it really is about what they need to know. They don't have the full vision or the picture or even the full scope and context of what the message is about. So a lot gets lost in translation. You ever played that game where you put 7 people on the line and you whisper something in one person's ear and you tell them to whisper it to the next person and to the next person to the next person. And by the time it gets to the beginning, there's a totally different message than the one that you sent in the first place. So to break all of that down and to eliminate that from happening, you bring some individual contributors into your executive retreat. You're going to build communication and you're going to build transparency. The communication is frontline people will get it from the horse's mouth, not passed down to them from somebody, but they're going to get it from the senior most leader. Think about it when they go back as a frontline leader and they can say the credibility of the CEO shared this with me in an executive retreat that I was a part of. It's going to be mind-blowing, massively mind-blowing. The second part of that is the transparency, that if they get to be in the room when a decision is made to move on a new strategy or to terminate an old strategy or to reinforce and double down on the strategy and the why behind that strategy, that's an incredible amount of transparency to that frontline individual contributor, which is going to build trust. You probably have heard me say this before, and I'll say it 1,000 times, that transparency breeds trust. The more transparent you are as a leader, the more trust you'll breed in your team and your organization. So that's the second way executive retreats boost individual contributor performance, is by increasing communications and improving transparency, which leads to trust. Now, here's a third reason, or the third why, or the third how executive retreats help individual contributors to reach their highest level, is focusing on 2 things. Number 1, leadership skills and leadership capability. So think about this. Again, go back to your old self for the first job that you got when you were an individual contributor and you were a high performer and you got invited to a meeting like this. Well, it's going to only enhance your leadership skills because you're going to be at the executive table as an equal, seeing how senior leaders communicate. How do they talk about challenges? How do they don't let their emotions run wild around the executive table? How they're very thoughtful and deliberate with what they say. How they prepare for the meeting by reading all the materials in advance and not just showing up and expecting everything to work because you're in the room. No, you have to prepare. So you're going to improve their leadership skills and you're going to improve their long-term capability because they now can see at a senior level what the senior most leadership team is thinking about, talking about, and working on. So that's the third way you're going to put your organization to have a greater impact, by inviting individual contributors to an executive retreat and giving them the opportunity to build their leadership skills and their capability. You're going to invest in them in this way. It is going to be dynamic and it is going to be impactful. And that's the third way that executive retreats enhance your individual contributors, is by boosting their leadership skills and their capability. Now, here's a fourth way that I want you to know an executive retreat can help you, and that is around innovation and problem solving. Now, when I say innovation and problem solving, I want you to know that every organization needs to build a culture of innovation. Innovation really is about new ideas and implementing those ideas, or at least trying those ideas out to see if they're successful. and identifying problems that you have and trying to solve for those problems in a new and creative way. Well, I will tell you this, if you don't know this as a senior level leader, every last one of your frontline individual contributors sees a problem in your organization and they have an idea about how to solve that problem. But if you never talk to them and they see that problem existing repeatedly over and over and over and over again, and nobody ever addresses it, they're going to just disengage. They're going to quit and saying, you know what, nobody cares. So if they don't care, why should I care? So you need to understand that your individual contributors see every flaw in the system. They see every broken process, every chink in your armor, everything that isn't going right. They see stuff that you could never see from your position. They see it. But what they're waiting on is for you to create an environment and a culture that if they raise an idea or an innovative solution to a problem, that you're going to listen to that idea, try to use that idea to improve the company. But if they've raised ideas over and over again and nothing ever gets done about, nothing ever changes, then they're going to stop suggesting those ideas. I'm telling you that for a fact. I've been that person who stopped raising ideas because they weren't listening. And so I'm telling you now that a lot of your individual contributors will be like this. And this is why if you bring a few of them to your executive retreat and lay out what your biggest challenges are, and to create space for them to offer innovative solutions to the challenges that they see or the challenges that you share, then you're going to improve their ability to innovate and to solve problems. You're going to inspire them and motivate them to continue to have that open two-way communication to share new things that they learn when they go back to the work site and when they go back to the front line or when they go back to their remote office, wherever they might work. You're going to create this environment of trust, of value in every innovative idea that they bring to the table. You might even create new processes of how you raise more ideas like that and get them in an idea file that you can then process and see which ones work, see which ones don't work. This is how you build an innovation culture in an organization. I know a little bit of something about that because I've had innovation in my title before. I know the importance of creating space for your teams to transform everything that they do. How do we do this differently than we've ever done it to solve a problem that we have over and over again? That's why you want to invite individual contributors to be a part of your executive retreat. That is number 4. Now, the last one, which is pretty simple that you can probably take away from this 100 times over, and that is by inviting an individual contributor or two to your executive retreat, you know what you're doing? You're going to motivate them and you're going to engage them. You're going to create people who are evangelists for your culture, for your organization and what you're trying to do, and most importantly, the work product and you as a leader. See, when people get exposed to the leadership at a transparent way, at an executive retreat offsite where everybody's got on jeans and t-shirts, nobody is suited and booted, nobody has on their, their business suit or their power suit or their power tie. They don't have any of that stuff on. Instead, they got on jeans and a t-shirt, flip-flops, sandals, or their fresh pair of Air Jordans. And everybody's sitting around as peers and equals talking about the challenges of the company and the organization, looking for new ways to do things, asking deeper questions around why we do what we do, reshaping the values. Those things will motivate individual contributors because they will see you for the human being that you are, not for the title that you hold. And that's been the biggest problem in most organizations because senior level leadership is so far up, most people only see your title. They see your name and your title and think, I can't talk to him. I can't talk to her. I can't approach her at all about this problem that I see. It seems to be massive separation. But if you get people in the space of an executive retreat, focus on your culture, focus on leadership development, focus on building a better business brand, focus on new products and services, whatever your retreat is themed around, you're going to motivate your frontline individual contributors to become better and more committed to the work at hand. They're going to go back and be evangelists for why other people need to be engaged in the culture. It's like that person who's never been to church in their life and they go to a church and they have this amazing experience that convicts them that they want to go out and now tell the whole world the good news about what they heard. Well, you invite some individual contributors to an executive retreat, they're going to come back and want to go tell everybody the good news. That's if you got strong leaders. Because if you got some weak, jellyback leaders who are not effective at all, they're going to leave that executive retreat and go tell everybody, see, Bob ain't worth 2 pence. Bob ain't worth this. Sammy ain't worth this. Nancy's not worth this, because they're going to see through it. So let's hope you've done the right things first by recruiting top-level talent and retaining them, and that you don't have a bunch of nepotism bringing bad people into your organization. Because if you do, you won't motivate them and you won't engage them. But I just wanted to put that in there to remind you that you need to have top talent at the top. You need to invest in growing and developing your leaders. Make sure they get adequate training. Bringing in speakers and authors like me to teach and train and motivate them to be better. So when you do this executive retreat, that you can motivate and engage your team, because you brought a couple frontline individual contributors who are now able to see the biggest picture and the value of what you're doing as a leadership team. So there you have it. Those are the 5 ways in which you, as an executive leader, can host an executive retreat and be inclusive of some individual contributors that really do add value to your organization by sharing with them the opportunity to be in the same space with you as other leaders to help to focus on what's important for the company. It's going to do these 5 things. Number 1, create connection and belonging. Number 2, improve communication and transparency. Number 3, improve their leadership skills and their capability. Number 4, focus on innovation and problem solving. And number 5, motivate them and engage them more deeply in your culture. Now, if you do this, it is really going to take your company off the charts. Why? The Society for Human Resource Management says that offsites and executive retreats increase engagement by 83%. Not only that, it improves communication and collaboration by 73%. These are the organizations who do executive offsites. Now, as someone who has hosted multiple executive offsites with my clients, I can tell you it really does strengthen the culture between your executive team. And when you add in the mix of putting some frontline individual contributors as a part of the process, then you evangelize a whole cohort of people who are totally invested in helping you to achieve your mission. So if you need help with something like this, then don't be afraid to do 2 things. Number 1, send me a direct message or send me an email or a comment on this video, and my team will follow up, because we'd be happy to help you and your organization with your next offsite. And now is a great time to be thinking about it, because we're at the end of the year. And so we're booking these offsites for the beginning of the year right now to get started early in the new year, to be able to set your strategy for engagement, for leadership development, for culture building, and organizational transformation at the top of the year. Look forward to talking with you. And if this video mattered to you, I want you to share it with somebody else. And if you want more details about how an executive retreat can help your individual contributors, then I want you to click to my blog in the bio. It'll take you to my latest blog post about this subject. So until then, I want to thank you all for watching. Have a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you soon.